Hi, Misha here, and since every day this week we've had some level of rain, even storms, we weren't able to go shooting as we planned and hoped. So, since the internet loves list videos, let's do that. And since you guys like AK videos, let's do an AK list. This time, I thought it might be fun to talk about the top 6 AKs that I frankly underestimated in one way or another. Really didn't get around to buying as soon as I should have, or didn't think as much of until I got them. Just, ones that exceeded my expectations. Now, these are not going to be my favorite AKs exactly. Hope that makes sense. This video on Mishaco will be straight to the point as much as I can make it. Then again, I have a lot to do outside right now anyway. Neither do you, so let's hang out. But I will also do a second video with more commentary and even some conspiracy theories over on the Misha's AK World channel. It won't be the same content, it'll just be a companion to this one. And as always, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help out so we can get to the range when it isn't raining, check out the link to Patreon. So, let's dive in. Number 6. Kalashnikov, USA, KP-104. Well, started off as a pistol, now it's a carbine. We're starting off the video with this because this was the first series of American-made AKs that actually impressed and interested me. But I really wasn't expecting much and really didn't know what to expect at all. And what's nice for me is we never got an AK 102, 104, 105 style import. And by that I mean the combination front sight gas block, full length gas tube, handguards, and then of course the 12.5-inch barrel. We've had similar guns, but never a Russian spec. Of course, this is 7.62 by 39. But what really got me, two things. First, just how close to Russian Izhmash Kalashnikov concerned spec this really is. I did handle several of the AK Century series while in Russia over the years, so I do have literally first-hand experience. And this really is just a dead ringer. So that's nice. But of course, it doesn't matter if a gun is not reliable. And it is. This is really 100% as far as I can remember, maybe one or two oopsies in the very beginning. To be fair, it's often difficult to get shorter barrels running because, you have virtually no dwell time without some kind of booster or extension. So, yeah. On top of that, it does not feel what people consider overgassed. I have comments and thoughts about the whole overgas thing, but that's for another time in video. But no, it doesn't feel overly thumpy for what it is. And it was ready to go, even though it shipped as a pistol. It was easy to either make it into an SBR, a carbine, or a braced pistol. And as a little bonus, they made quite good AK-103 style magazines, polymer, complete with the metal reinforcements to kind of complete the set. All stuff that we were just really needing, and considering what Segas go for these days, I didn't find this to be a negative. As to the whole KUSA situation, again, story for another video, and I'll have some comments over on the Misha's AK World. But yes, this gun definitely exceeded expectations. I'm glad to have it, mostly because I started off having very few to no expectations. In fact, I liked it so much that I ended up selling my Arsenal SLR 106 and did a whole video on that. Yeah, it shocked me too that I sold an import and kept a domestic. But since I did, and it was for this gun, yeah, it had to be on the list. Number 5. WBP Jack. As you know, this is a Polish import, and it is almost AKM spec. But the reason it's on the list is because WBP started off as essentially a commercial manufacturer. And just because something's an import doesn't mean it's good. Commercial companies over there are just like commercial companies over here. But they started off on the right foot because they had much closer access to original know-how, tooling, parts left over from the old Comblock days, the old Factory 11, Circle 11 days, including the receivers they use. There's actually a subcontractor in Poland that does these for more than a few companies, and so this is an AKM spec receiver, just without the third pin. You can still see the XY stamps. So that's a good start, and the welds are clean and all that. Same kind of goes for the paint finish. They use the same type of paint that FB Radom and whatnot have been using, and at least for my gun here, this is a true 16¼ inch cold hammer forged chrome line barrel from FB Radom. So already a good start there. But when these kicked onto the market, I didn't know what to expect. We first got parts kits, and they were roundly criticized for having cast front trunnions. Now, according to the WBP, they had no issues with the cast trunnions when they sold them to military, police, private security agencies. Because the truth is, casting can be done perfectly fine. I mean, Springfield, Ruger, many others have made cast receiver guns for years. It's all in your QC and the metal and just your process. But Americans love forged, so they switched over to forged parts kits. By the time the first Fox rifles came in, they were all cast trunnions, at least the ones they were shipping over here. So that was already a good start. It got it even better when they dropped some of the Barrel features like the Barrel scope mount. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's nice if you're doing an AKM spec gun not to have it back here. And they also started doing very high quality replica, or I should say modern day made Polish laminate furniture. It's not really a replica, it's made in Poland, it's laminated, so yeah. But again, that kind of shows you their access to original know-how, people, tech over there. Now, the one I kept still has the side scope mount, and that's because I use this as a AKML clone. That's why I have a Polish AKML flash hider on it. I think it's neat. Your mileage may vary. Bakelite grip. The other things that aren't true AKM spec, smooth top cover, which is a heavier top cover, and a polished bolt carrier group, which does give a very slick pull when you go to shoot it. You could blacken, paint the carrier, or even replace it. And ditto, you could replace the top cover if you wanted. Otherwise, this is an AKM, including having the later style Polish gas block and front sight, bayonet lug, cleaning rod, and taking standard mags. Shockingly, we have not had all that many AKM styles imported over the years. There have been a few, but not many, so it's nice to have another one. I put this mag in here because I wanted to mention something as an aside. This is a modern polymer Circle 11 marked mag. I've seen a few online think that WBP bought the trademark, the old Circle 11. They did not. That's actually a different company in Poland called Works 11. And I looked on their website, and their parent company does not list WBP. I'm not saying they've never partnered. I don't know that. But I'm just saying WBP and Works 11 are separate companies according to Polish government records. So these mags, for better or worse, are not made by WBP. Their mags actually look rather different. Just wanted to mention that. But no, these have really earned their place. And while they started off a little spendy, these days, if anything, their price have come down. and others have gone up. So I can't help but think that they've, kind of settled in. One thing about WBP that I like too, before we move on, their willingness to take criticism and to make changes. For example, the paint finish. The first couple of batches, the paint was very utilitarian, military style, a little bit of chipping, flaking. They improved the process. I appreciate that. So that, as well as moving markings around and doing different things to try to suit American customers, I do respect that. But yeah, they had to earn it with me because I just didn't know what to expect at all. Unlike, say, with American manufacturers where I had kind of a bad taste in my mouth from things like the Visca, I just didn't know what to expect from WBP. But, yeah, I have to admit, yeah, I'm a believer. How about you? Number 4. Arsenal SLR 105A1. Thought we would change things up on caliber. We've been looking at 7.62 by 39 guns so far. Now we have a 5.45 by 39. And it might seem unusual to have an Arsenal on this list given the criteria of the video, but the truth is a lot of people, including myself, slept on these. These were announced in 2004. From what I recall, most were sold in 2005 into 2006. They were not a huge import run, but this was Arsenal's first commercially available 5.45. Yes, I know the SLR 102 was supposed to happen, but never did. And it was Arsenal's first commercially available stamped receiver gun in America. Keep in mind, people were used to milled Arsenals at this point. And 5.45 had not quite hit its stride at that time period, 2005. It would be a few years before the surplus ammo would really come in. And these shipped with just kind of boring black polymer furniture. So I've noticed a lot of this has to do with looks. Now, the original 105 did not have the threaded barrel and bayonet lug. The A1 here in the US, they popped off the neutered front sight base and they put this on. But I put on this furniture from Coolfire years ago, and I'm so happy I did. It's Russian. The mag is East German, though, because it's just what I happened to grab. So, why is it on the list? Frankly, because it's such a nice gun. Like I said, I passed on one of these. They weren't super expensive when they came out. They were definitely cheaper than the milled offerings, but they were definitely more expensive than like the SAR-2. I had an SAR-2. I had a Bulgarian kit build from Ohio Rapid Fire, ORF. And it didn't really seem worth it at the time. I had other things going on, money, all that. And then, of course, the SLR 107s came out, the SLR 106s, and even the SLR 104s. And they were nice guns, all stamped receivers. But those were the guns that, while they were nice, they didn't feel like super better than any other stamp gun from Arsenal. I ended up with this on a deal. I bought it used unfired from a guy who I believe was selling it to get a 104 FR, because when those came out, a lot of people sold those, the fixed stock guns, to get the side folders. So I got this before prices went up, and sure glad I did, because as nice as the later Arsenal stamps are, this is better. The bolt travel is smoother, safety operation is slick, and the trigger. This trigger is just so much better than the later Arsenal triggers. So much so that I didn't swap it out. So, and it's just a very smooth shooter. Again, hate to use the term overgassed, but it isn't. 5.45 is already a kitten with a muzzle brake. I did swap out the US-made non-chrome brake for a, I think it's East German chrome line brake, because, cleaning 5.45 chrome is always nice. And, of course, it takes standard mags. No issues there. But I think with the wood, Bakelite's the way to go. It just ended up being such a nice shooting gun. And now that 5.45 stamped Arsenals of any type are kind of gone and probably gone forever, I'm sure glad I went ahead and picked this up. I would have been missing out if I didn't, because this is the only AK-74 spec import we've ever had. By that I mean not in, so no side rail. I did not want the railed version of this if I could help it, so I was glad I found one without the rail. They did have a railed version. And not a folder. And there's nothing against the AKS-74, but I just wanted a bog standard. And this what this is. The one reason I put the kind of earlier pattern, early 80s pattern muzzle brake on, that's about the time Bulgaria got the technology for the AK-74 from Russia. So when you look at Bulgarian-produced parts, they mirror early 80s Russian parts, which is particularly cool because that's Afghanistan war era. So basically, this is the kind of gun that the folks doing Red Dawn would have loved to have had. Instead, they had to make do by kind of converting on-screen AKMs from Egypt with muzzle brakes and what have you. But no, this is just 545. It's a delightful cartridge. Unfortunately, it's also kind of hard to find these days, and that probably won't change. But no, this had to be on the list because it definitely impressed me. Number 3. Also, reminder, check out Patreon to help keep the lights on around here. FEG SA85M. So, we returned to 7.62x39 guns, and this is something that I'm really glad I did. And it's a project that had been in the back of my mind for years. I do have a pre-ban SA85M, one of the underfolders. The underfolders are a little more common than the fixed stalkers. And then there are the post-ban guns that came in with standard mag wells, but thumbhole stocks and neutered front ends. And then later there were the SA2000Ms that had all that, plus they had single stack mag wells. Converting an SA2000M to take standard mags isn't the easiest. If you're a gunsmith, a machine shop, yeah, it's not too bad. But an individual, it's more work than you might think. So the SA85M is the way to go. And the only real difference between a pre-ban and a post-ban is the barrel hardware and the rear furniture. But what's nice about these, unlike certain other imports, it's a standard square cut receiver with standard rear trunnion and hole for the pistol grip and all that. Now, I've told the story about how I had this gun, sold it, and then kind of regretted it because the idea of turning it into an AKM-63 had been in my mind. And I thought it would turn out pretty well. The thing is, it came out better than I could have hoped for. After getting this gun back from the friend that had it for a few years, I thought, okay, I will put on a buttstock, a pistol grip, and a forearm, and that'll be good. And that's where I started. Luckily, I had an AKM-63 forearm, more importantly, gas tube. This is a longer tube than an AMD-65, otherwise they'd be interchangeable. The lower handguard is basically the same. And of course it takes a standard pistol grip for Hungarian. And while these are unique grips, they fit the same lug. And originally I was going to use a faux Hungarian buttstock, but luckily around that time some Hungarian AK-63 kits came in, the previous version. Now the AK-63 has a more conventional forearm, but it uses the same pistol grip and buttstock, so I was able to steal the furniture off that. So it's got a little bit of honest wear, but that's okay. And I thought a furniture swap would do Jim Dandy. And it did give that AKM-63 look. But then you looked at the front end, and it looked neutered. And I thought, well, I'll put a cleaning rod in it. But the problem was the rod wasn't really retained by anything because of how it was neutered. So then I thought, well, I can swap out the barrel hardware from those kits. And at first I was just going to do the one piece, but then I thought, well, if I'm doing it, do both. So swapped out the gas block and the front sight base. Also had to thread the barrel. Luckily, like the SAR-1, these came in with never threaded barrels. That's important because if you have something like a Mac 90, a lot of the times they had threads and they shaved them down. Not always, but a lot of the time. And that makes rethreading them 14 by 1 left hand difficult. But this was never threaded, so I threaded it. It threaded perfectly. Put on a muzzle nut. It always kind of amuses me when I go to the trouble of threading something and then put on a nut, not even a brake. But I wanted the look. So I needed to replace the front sight base to give the little lip here for the cleaning rod, and also the detent hole for the nut, because the original one doesn't have it. And originally I was going to leave the bayonet lug off, not worry about swapping the gas block, but again, in for a penny, in for a pound. And what's nice about this particular gun and gas tube arrangement is we have the ports on the gas block, because the AKM63 gas tube is not ported. Yes, other Hungarians are ported. This style isn't. So I needed a type of gas block that was was ported, and luckily the kit had one. Otherwise, it would be an unventilated gas system. Talk about overgassed. So it all came out fine. I'm always a little nervous when swapping gas blocks, but the gas port lined up, it cycled, Jim Dandy. On top of all that, on top of getting a really good replica that's an import-based gun with just some barrel work, it takes, of course, standard mags. This is Hungarian, but it's a lot of fun to shoot. There's something about this look. It's kind of a love it or hate it look with Hungarian guns, and I just happen to really enjoy it. And I also like that Hungarian guns like this are based on early AKM spec, non-lightning cut carriers, early style safety, that kind of thing. It's on the list because in the end, looking back, I don't know why I didn't do this project earlier, because I had the idea. Oh well, it all worked out in the end, and it's kind of become one of my favorite guns. I would have otherwise put the FEG AMD 65 in this video, but I think I kind of like this more, only because, I love wood. But we'll talk more about that in the AK World video. I will just say, though, don't overlook the Postman SA85M. I nearly did, and I would have regretted it. Number 2. FB Radom Archer Burreel. You knew this was going to be on the list, or at least you should have. I'll tell the full story for anyone who doesn't know it over on the other channel video. But yeah, I, like a lot of other people, thought the Burreel was a nice gun, but when IO imported these, they seemed too expensive, and they kind of were initially, and it was hard to get the parts to put them to rights. But over the years, more and more parts have become available as a project, and even today you can get the current imports done by Arms of America with pretty much all the goodies. And that's where it kind of starts, because a lot of people said, and I probably said it myself back then, oh, it's not really like a Burreel, it's an Archer, they're different. The thing is, I've noticed with AK guys, they put a lot of stock in furniture, something that's easily changed out. I mentioned it earlier with that SLR 105. It's definitely true with the SLR 104 UR, the Crink. Saddam's just changing furniture on a gun like this, because I had to convince several friends, no, this is a Burreel. It just needs the right handguard, put the rail on, put the stock on, the right grip, put the right mag in it. Now, to be fair, the first generation did have a weird 16-inch barrel with kind of a Tanto-style brake, but Gen 2 and Gen 3 from the IO batch and pretty much all the Arms of America have the correct brake on them. Has the lug for the bipod, proper everything. And yeah, mine has the left side selector as a faux thing, but Arms of America does offer those selectors you can install to kind of give that replica look if you want. So yeah, once you dress these up, they look really good, says the blind guy. So in addition to being closer to a Burreel, a WZ-96 than first appearance, another one, this was the gun that really changed my mind fundamentally about 5.56 223 AKs. I'm not ashamed to admit that years ago, before I picked one of these up, I didn't have the highest opinion. But in my defense, we had some less than great guns. For example, the Romanian SAR-3, while not a stinker, was never as reliable, dependable as the SAR-1, SAR-2. And on top of that, there were so many mag types back then. You had the Chinese, you had the Yugo style, again, the SARs. You had a lot of converted 74 mags, like the Bakelites to 223. They didn't run great. It was just a mess. But over the years, the situation has improved. Barrel mags, along with arsenals, have kind of become the standard 223 mag in America for AKs. And this is one that was just reliable, dependable, because it was built with parts intended for military use, not for civilian. And that's another thing. A lot of the other 223 AKs we had up till the Archer, the Barrel, weren't made for a military or based on a military gun. It was just something, strictly speaking, commercial. And that's not necessarily saying they're junk, but yeah. Up to that point, if you wanted a 223 AK style, a Galil was about your best option. Even then, with all the less than great Galil copies and clones and builds out there, you had to be careful, because unless you could afford a $3,000 pre-ban, what are you gonna do? Also, because these were so underestimated, even though their introductory price was high, man, they got cheap at the end when IO was just dumping them. That's kind of the tragedy of this gun, is IO just really failed to market it. This gun also kind of shattered the myth that AKs aren't accurate inherently, because these are not sub-MOA guns. They're not target guns, but this is an 18-inch called Hammerforged Chrome Line Barrel, 1-in-9 twist. It is more accurate than a lot of shooters, and with decent ammo, it's under 2 MOA, with match ammo under 1.5. Again, I'm approximating. Obviously, target shooting isn't my deal, but I can appreciate others that it is and share in their enjoyment. And yeah, this goes to show you that an AK can be a decent practical target gun, including having a very good scope mount option up here with the POPC rail system. This is a Gen 4. You can put the lower mount Gen 3s on if you prefer, so on and so forth. And newer imports are threaded 14x1 left hand. Military guns aren't. They're pinned on, so you can attach muzzle devices. So this definitely changed my mind on 223s, and was definitely a gun that I super underestimated and has become one of my favorite, not just 223 AKs, but AKs of all time. So it absolutely had to be on the list. Number 1, and the lights aren't on because people didn't support on Patreon. Atlantic Firearms Manufacturing Asian Contract AK Underfolder. This is a gun that I underestimated in every possible way, and that's why it's at the end of the video. I know this might seem strange, but hang tight and I'll try to explain. And good old underfolding stocks. To begin with, I underestimated just how unique, different, interesting the North Korean Type 68 was. Their Type 58 was almost a direct copy clone of a Russian. Few detail differences, certainly a little more crude machining, bluing, woodwork. And I really just kind of assumed in my head, like an idiot, that a Type 68 was a copy of a Chinese Type 56-1. It is not. It is its own thing as much as anything is its own thing. And I like that. I like collecting variations. And that carries over to this build. In fact, I picked up a couple of these kits, so-called Asian contract kits, quite a while ago, and thought, oh, one day I'll throw them together. This is how out of it I was. I really didn't even open the bags. I was like, okay, they're just. I picked them up just because. But then when Atlantic announced these builds, It was the right time, right place. Frankly, I just needed a new AK to mess around with. And while they were sold out then, they had another batch coming, so I put in a pre-order. And this is the one I received. And I really, really like it. This is how you do a battlefield pickup. Yes, the parts have honest wear and tear, but they're not completely beat up and shattered either. There's some denting in the back of the top cover. I would replace it, except this is actually a mostly matching kit. In fact, it might be 100% matching. If not, it's close. And it's been there. It's been through the wars. So keep it as is. So I like that they didn't sand the wood. Century Arms would have sanded it, re-blued the metal. They left it on natural. And then they paired it with the, perfectly proper receiver. I know some people don't like the selector markings that they used, but there's several styles that this variant had. More importantly, they have the correct profile barrel, and it's chrome lined too. And that's kind of the beginning of where these are unique guns. They don't have an AK Type 3 profile. They don't have an AKM profile. They have their own profile that's a hybrid. And this is where I start to see just how unique the Type 68 was. Mostly when it comes to simplified production. Now, they didn't use a lot of cast or any cast parts. These are machined, but with a lot of hand fitting. For example, the muzzle nut is simplified. The lightning cuts on the front sight base are simplified. The gas block is actually pretty iconic for this because of the flat sides, top and sides. The bayonet lug is different. The handguard, the furniture, is cool because it's actually a type of chew wood, as they call it, which is catappa. And we have a version of catappa trees here in Arkansas. The rear sight is unique. In fact, there's a few different styles of plunger. Some of these have a smooth top cover, some have ribbed. The bolt carrier internally is unique and different. Selector. The trigger guard's another very unique part. It's a ribbed trigger guard. And even the way the underfolding stock works, at first I just thought, oh, it's just your standard underfolder. No, it's not. The whole mechanism, the whole system is different. I even have an original mag with it to kind of complete the look. So if I had done a custom build, this is exactly what I would have done, and this was what Atlantic did. Since then, I've actually picked up a few more of their builds, and each time they pretty much made the same calls and decisions that I have. Now, would I have preferred an import? Well, of course, but I wanted to close the video out talking about parts kits because the place and the time, and this is my opinion, the place and the time for parts kits are for guns that we don't have imports of, or semi-automatic version imports of, and that we never will. We're never going to get semi-automatic versions like this. And there's a lot of guns that we'll never will just because they're not in production anymore. And as time goes on, parts kits are going to get harder and harder to find. They're going to be more and more expensive. And, unfortunately, we might see more and more parts cut up. Who knows? So, parts kits and builds based on them can be a good investment. Not always. Don't lose your mind. Don't go crazy making something 100% clone correct, spending $5,000, $6,000, and then expecting to get $10,000 out of it. No, don't do that. But don't pass up a good deal on parts kits. Some of the best deals, some of the best investments I've made in the firearms world have been just in parts kits, with barrel preferably, but even without. And that goes to show you here. I nearly overlooked these kits because they didn't have barrels and because I just thought it was a bog standard gun. Luckily, some sense prevailed. And I'm really happy I have this. And I even enjoy shooting it. It's not a gun I'm going to buy and shoot a whole lot, but it was a better shooter than I expected. So yeah, like I said at the beginning, I underestimated this in every possible way, from the original military version, to the kits, to the build itself. And I think we've all underestimated the value in picking up parts kits while they come in, don't you? But either way, I thought this would be a good area to close out the video with. And there we have it. I mean, I could have picked others. There are certainly ones that I underestimated. Again, these aren't my favorites necessarily, although some overlap exists for sure. And I think next time, especially if you guys like this video, we'll do one on the top 6 AKs that we kind of overestimate, that have become mythologized. Not that these are the worst or least favorites, just that their reputation definitely precedes them, if that makes sense. But yeah, let me know what you think. And if you could, definitely like, share, subscribe, and definitely comment too, because commenting is a lot of fun for all of us, I hope. And feel free to give your own list in those comments too. What would be your kind of AKs that you picked up now that you love that maybe you overlooked for a while? I think it's an interesting topic because there's a lot of guns we look forward to. We get them and we enjoy them. But it's really interesting, the guns that we never thought we would like, we pick up and they become a favorite. At least I think so. With that, this is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.